She really inspired me and helped me grow and develop that passion.
Welcome, everybody, to the Reptile Studio podcast. My name's Greg, and my
Brian.
co-host is Brian from Hudson Valley Reptile Rescue, and we are talking to Dion from Reptiliatus today. How's it going, Dion?
Hello, everyone. I'm great. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for having me on. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited too. So I wanted to say that because right now we're recording the Herper series, I figured we may as well start on that, trajectory.
Sure.
And so I know most people that are going to watch this are most likely going to know who you are and the places that you've been, like publicly, which we'll get into. But I really want to know from you what herping is like in your area, because it's Canada. And I know there's like,
Sure.
I know you're not that far. I'm in Connecticut. It's not like,
Yeah.
our climate is pretty much the same for the most part. Um, so I don't know if you have been herping, if that's something that you've been doing your whole life, or, or what it is, but I'd like to know, what it is for you. What does herping mean? What is it like in your area?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, for those that don't know, I'm like a Southern Ontario native. Um, our province, as far as herping goes, you pretty much have like a 5 to, I don't even think I can say 6 month window. Yeah, you're good from early April till maybe mid-October before you're kind of looking at the season ending for finding herps. But that being said, within that window, I'm very appreciative and grateful that we actually have a pretty solid variety of selection of reptiles and amphibians native to the province. Whether it's frogs, newts, and salamanders. We have one species of native lizard, just the five-line skink. I've
Yeah,
actually never
same.
seen one in the wild, unfortunately. Not yet, at least. They're just sort of sparse now. I mean, if you know where to find them, there's quite abundant, but you have to know where to find them because otherwise it's very fragmented. But no, we have all sorts of things. I mean, where I am in my, I guess, local area, there's quite a few, like I said, turtles. We have everything from Blanding's turtles, Eastern painted turtles, clapping turtles. I don't think they're really in my area, but further south we have spiny soft shells, yellow or the eastern spotted turtles, the spotted eastern spotted newt. I'm butchering. I think it's just the spotted newts. We have a few different species of salamander, like the redbacks, the yellow spotted, the blue spotted, the Jeff or salamander. There's a few different kinds. So uh, we're very lucky. Some cool animals around. And frogs. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. Quite a few different species of frogs. We have the gray tree frogs, which are the only true tree frog here, but nonetheless, we have one. And I mean, their range goes all the way down into the States. But they're a cool looking frog.
Oh yeah.
We have all kinds of different, there's like the spring peepers, there's different wood frogs, bullfrogs, unfortunately, are making their way across the country now as an invasive species. The green frog. There's all kinds of really neat frogs. Frogs, you name it. So we do get to do some cool herping. Snakes. I mean, I could go on and on. There's the
Right.
eastern garters. We have smooth greens, all kinds of milk snakes, eastern milks, eastern hogs. Cool stuff to find. So yeah, I mean, growing up, the season starts. There's the tadpoles and everything. You're finding that the American toads in May are calling all night, and for tadpoles. Is there every little vernal pool or puddle in a ditch, you name it, they're breeding in that. And I think that was just a very exciting thing as a child to go check out the tadpoles. And I don't know, yeah, like reptiles and amphibians have always been a fascination and a love for me as a child. And I definitely think my mother had a big part in imparting that love onto me because she's always loved animals as well. And growing up, I just kind of gravitated towards reptiles and amphibians. Where like I'd go to the local library. I've shared this on other podcasts. That back when dinosaurs walked by the window, I'd go take out a cassette and watch like the old National Geographic on reptiles. Like, the crocodile is blah blah blah.
Yeah.
This is a frog. A frog is an amphibian. And I still remember watching Bill Nye, and I think I was like 4 or 5. And I remember that there's that one episode that distinguished the difference between a reptile and an amphibian, and it stuck with me like that was how I learned the difference between reptiles and amphibians. So I've always just had this love for these types of animals and insects and other invertebrates as well. And I mean, I love all animals in general, but I have this niche love for those specific types of animals, and so it stems from just the misunderstanding around them and lack of desire to understand them as much from the general public. And I think that's part of why I do what I do. But yeah, as far as herping goes, I digress. Get ready for that, guys. I apologize. But as far as herping goes, yeah, we're very lucky because Canada, the majority of the country experiences very harsh winters, very cold, not conducive to ever finding any reptile outside. The negative degrees are what, like down into the 30s and 20s or whatever. And so, yeah, the time we have, we're very fortunate. And we take full advantage and go look for these animals and appreciate them and take pictures and whatnot. Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
So as far as I know, I mean, I know where Brian is in New York. He's got 2 other snakes that aren't in Connecticut. Was it the Massasauga rattlesnake?
Yeah, barely. Not
Yep.
in my area though. That's way out west.
But in New York.
Yeah,
in New York.
But still in New York, but way out west.
Yeah.
It's the eastern Massasauga, but it only exists in the western half of New York.
Yeah. And the queen snake.
Correct.
And is that in your area, Brian?
The queen snake is spotted throughout New York. So, I mean, technically it could be. I've never seen one in the wild. I've only seen people who apparently don't like reptiles and send me pictures asking me what it is. That's the only time I've seen queen snakes. Unfortunately, they get to see the rarest snake in New York State, and I do not.
Yeah.
Sad face. But do you get venomous snakes up into Canada? Like,
so we have the Massasauga. It's also kind of peppered, I think, further into northeastern Ontario. It's more abundant. Like, not so much in western or southern Ontario.
Gotcha.
Yeah, its range is a lot more sparse. I have heard of different efforts to sort of help its numbers in Niagara escarpment. I don't know if that's true, but yeah, it's more northeast in the province. But it definitely, it exists. Like, we have a conservation. I don't know if it's even a conservation. Like, there's a park called Killbear. And we used to go camping there as kids, and like there's Massasaugas. You can find them, so they're not that uncommon. I unfortunately, funny enough, have never seen a wild one yet, but like I've seen them at educational centers or the zoo and whatnot. They're an interesting as far as rattlers go. But correct me if I'm wrong. They're not part of the same genus as most of the are they? Aren't they in their own?
I don't believe they are.
I forget the genus. It's not Crotalus.
I don't think it's Crotalus. I think it's I don't know. That's a Google search away for basically anybody. But they look very different than a lot of those. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
They're a neat looking snake, more narrow faced. But yeah, so we do get some of those. Pardon me?
Very small as well.
Oh yeah. In comparison, for sure. Yep. Yeah, they're a cool looking
That's neat.
snake. Yeah, we're
You were going off on your list of native Ontario reptiles, and your
yes,
list is almost identical to New York. I mean, it makes sense. We're right next to
yeah.
each other, basically. I mean, I'm not. I'm next to New York City. I'm about an hour north of New York City, so we're
Mhm.
far apart in terms of where we are. But
Yeah.
as far as ecology and what's outside is concerned, a lot of those species are very similar to New York, and I'm sure Connecticut as well.
Yeah.
As Greg was saying before, we share Connecticut and New York share many species,
Mhm.
minus a couple. I think you have a couple that we don't have. Do you have the eastern fence? Anyway, that's not the point. Um,
No, no, the fence lizards.
yeah, you don't have?
No,
Yeah, you just have the
just
5 line, right?
yeah, and then up out west you get the is it a western alligator lizard or some type of alligator lizard, and then they
Okay,
have one species of horned toad as well, which is pretty cool because that's
that
just like
that's neat.
seems not very Canadian as far as the types of herps you would find. You think like this can't be here. It's got to be in like I don't know Arizona or
Right,
wherever,
right.
somewhere that way.
That's how I feel about the green snake, the smooth green snake.
Oh yeah, right. It looks very
Is
exotic.
or
Yeah,
is it smooth? I always forget, smooth
it's
or
smooth.
rough?
It's smooth.
Smooth. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
roughest
the smooth
further
green
south.
snake. Like when I see it, I'm like, this is not normal.
Yeah.
Like
At least you see it. I've yet to find
no, no,
one.
no.
I've only
I
ever
don't mean
seen
in
a dead
person.
one.
I've never found one in person.
Uh
I've never
yeah,
seen one.
yeah, I really would like to find one.
But just seeing other people, post them and seeing pictures of them, I'm like, that just does not make sense for Connecticut or Canada.
For a
Uh,
non-tropical species, yeah.
yeah.
It looks like an Asian vine snake that should be off in some
Yeah,
foreign land of,
Yeah. Yeah.
95-degree permanent temperatures and whatnot,
yeah.
But it's
climbing through
interesting,
mangrove trees.
it's interesting, Diane, that you talked about how um, your mother played a huge role in that because she's always been an animal lover. And does that include, reptiles and amphibians and all that too?
Yeah, actually, she definitely encouraged me, even as a child. I mean, I know we don't condone this sort of thing nowadays, or I don't know, debatable. But I remember there's like a puddle that was drying up in the neighborhood, and there were American toad tadpoles in it. So we went and she helped me collect a few, and we raised them together in like a bowl. And I think I took three of them, and yeah, we raised them till they became toadlets, and then let them go again. And I know, yeah, she really inspired me and helped me grow and develop that passion. I'm very fortunate. My father's from Iran, and he's as like a Persian man culturally. Um, they're not into those types of animals, let alone most animals.
Right.
So, despite that, he really saw my love and appreciation for these critters, and he created a space and in his home and allowed me to explore that passion and develop it. Even though it wasn't something he really liked. But yeah, my mother definitely was an enabler as far as that goes, and really for the most part, I mean, I can go on and on about other little nitpicky things, but I mean, they weren't either. Neither of them are a fan of the arachnids, and I definitely was testing for them with that. But they were very supportive of like amphibians and reptiles and insects and things like that. So I was very lucky in that regard. But definitely, yeah, that I think that love and passion for sure is genetic from my mother, probably.
Yeah, and I got it from my father. Like him and
Very
I
cool.
used to go out herping all the time before either of us knew that herping was like that was like the word. We
Yeah,
would go out hiking and flip rocks,
yeah,
to find things. And we like you said, frowned upon now, but we would go and we would find, like a ringneck snake or a red belly snake or something and build like a little terrarium at home with like moss and sticks and all that. And, um, you know, was it a good thing to do? Probably not, but that led me to where I am today, so
yeah.
it's fine. I'm totally for it. Um,
100%. It's a
yeah,
constant learning process, right? I mean,
exactly.
And even if someone told me to do that now, I'm not gonna say, oh, like for shame or anything too, because this is one of the ways that we learn to love and appreciate the animals. But yeah, it's part of our upbringing and our history of how we got where we are now, right? So
Yeah. Um, so the
Wait
first,
a second, Greg. Wait 1 second. Dion, behind you on what would be your right side, is that a green tree monitor just kind of like, hey, what are you guys
yeah,
doing? Okay.
that's
I'm
Basil.
I'm sorry. I just caught it out of the corner of my eye and I wanted to make sure
Yeah.
I saw what I thought I saw.
Yeah, he's getting rambunctious. He's had his afternoon nap, and the poor guy's still in a smallish enclosure. I have to still finish up these renovations in the room before my
Yeah,
parents head out for a 3 week trip in Europe. We have to fix the flooring before the huge custom enclosure gets built along this whole wall. It's going to
gotcha.
be 7 by 6 feet. So uh, he doesn't know what exciting things are coming for him. And Fabzi, the female. So they'll be introduced for the first time and living together in that enclosure when it's all
Awesome.
built. But yeah, that's the male. So he's just cruising around, pretending he hasn't eaten today.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
don't they all?
Yeah.
Um,
So,
Sorry to interrupt. I
no, no,
just
no.
no, it's his
he was
fault, not
like
yours.
he was like right up against the glass. I was like, wow.
He always loves to, it's, yeah, whenever I'm in the room, he's way more like just out there, and he's like, oh, that's the guy that feeds me. Let me get his
Yep.
attention.
Monitors in general. I mean, as a
Oh,
rescue, we take in a lot of savannas, but
I can
man,
only imagine.
monitors in general are like, hey, what are you doing? What's going on? Can I come out? Can you
Yeah.
please let me out? And I mean, as soon as I get there, they could be on the other side of the enclosure, and then after I get there, they're like right against the glass,
Yep.
just waiting,
So
waiting for me to
smart.
waiting for me to do something, waiting for me to interact with them in some way, whether it's just saying hi or and
Yeah.
I have people come sometimes in my Savannah, the one that I've had for 2 years at the rescue, it was a rescue. Um, he came in and people would get there and he would like dig at the door. And then I would take him out, I'd introduce them, and I put him back, and he was perfectly calm after that. It was the weirdest thing. And ultimately, I realized, like, he just wants to know who's in his space. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen. I don't think I've ever had an animal that's this outgoing in our direct care. Tegus are smart, but man, monitors just have a really weird interaction with their space and how they feel and perceive things
Yeah.
that go on. So I had to know what was going on.
No,
I wanted to
again,
know what he was doing.
I heard him in the corner. I was almost gonna ask. I hope he's not like. I hope you're not picking up on too much of that noise because his nails go on the glass.
Wouldn't matter anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
No, they're amazing animals. I can't believe I waited as long as I did to start keeping Varanids, but they're so rewarding. They're such
Oh yeah.
fascinating reptiles to keep. Yeah.
now on your other side, is that the what is it, the Chinese, whatever,
The crocodile lizards?
is there?
Yeah, they're actually in my living room.
Oh,
Those
okay.
are my toke geckos. So Tiki and
Oh right.
Torch and the whole family of tokes, yeah. And then
Okay.
behind me is a bunch of crocodile skink enclosures, a few more, and then some of the dart frogs above. And then the leaf turtles are like down below on the floor
Yeah.
because it's cooler there. They don't like the heat as much.
That's when I first started following you. When you got the when you started with the red eye
Oh yeah, the
the
crocodile skink.
yeah. That's when I started following you. You were taking them to the vet.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
stuff was awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm very
That-
lucky that my close friend is a vet and he's opened, the appointment room for filming and to really share that experience. They're not hard animals to keep. It's just getting healthy imports and
Right.
well, you need to take responsibility and properly, reproduce them in captivity. But once you get the ball rolling, they're really rewarding and great animals. But yeah, that was a stressful experience with that first import of or that first group that I acquired, and like they were not in the best of shape, and unfortunately I lost a few, but they came in such like some of them were
Yeah.
yikes, really really bad shape. So,
I mean,
but yeah,
don't feel too bad. You were battling something that was nature at its worst. You know, we
yeah,
at the rescue we take in a lot of not nature at its worst, just
hmm
people at their worst. So I
yeah,
definitely get it.
yeah. That's a whole other thing. That's definitely
Yep.
pretty bad. But
Um,
Nope.
so when you guys were just talking about monitors, and Brian, you were saying that the way that they like interact with their environment is unique.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now I know we're like skipping past herping right now, which is fine, because that's the way the conversation's happening. But so I just told you, Dion, that I got to captive checkered garter snakes, captive bred
yeah,
checkered garter snakes. And watching them, and I've only had them for a couple of weeks. Watching them reminds me of watching like small monitors.
hmm
The way they're so cued in to movement, and
yeah,
they come right up to the glass.
hmm
It's not like, oh shit, here's a human, I better run. It's like, oh shit, here's a human, I'm hungry. It's a totally different experience than anything else that I keep. Which brings up this question I have. The male has, as far as I've known, as far as I've seen, has eaten one tiny, like cut up piece of silver side
hmm
fish, and that's it. Like
hmm
he'll pick up, he'll bite a lot of food. He'll like bite it and then put it down, bite it, put it down. So I'm wondering if you have any experience with that, because I know that you recently acquired some. Was it California red sided or Oregon?
California, yeah, the
Yeah.
Infernal. Yeah, so I mean, okay, I guess I've been keeping a garter snake. So I have my female sylvanite. I've had her since a neonate, since like I guess it would have been early summer of 2021. Um, I think it's worth considering that you have only had them a week, although a lot of garter snakes are super food motivated and will eat right away regardless. Have you tried offering like chicken hearts or night crawlers? Sometimes you can get frog legs frozen from different like international supermarkets, anything like that, or even pinky mice.
Yeah, so I haven't found a pinky that's small enough.
I don't want to be morbid, but you can also chop them up.
Well,
Like
I
frozen
know,
thawed, of course.
right?
Just to be
Yeah,
clear.
That's not morbid. That's just fact of life. I mean,
yeah,
Yes, yeah, yes.
yeah,
been doing
I
it
know it's not
forever.
for everyone, but if you
Yeah.
can do that too, especially with garters, they just like they'll go up to a dish and just slowly eat everything that's on there. A lot of people will mix and match different food sources too, and
I've I've
supplement it.
I've had pretty good luck, Greg, with frozen thawed mouse tails from like an adult mouse
Mm,
when you cut it off and let it thaw out, obviously. And
hmm
I've had very good luck with a lot of colubrid species taking that down. It's less scary, gives a little bit of protein, a little bit of calcium from the
Yeah.
vertebrae in it. So it's not a bad meal. It's not a
hmm
good stable meal, but it's not a bad
right,
meal to get them going.
yeah,
I mean, if they're happily accepting Silverside, I don't know if it's that it only accepted it once or that that was the one thing you offered that it liked. Um, you can always try scenting other things with that and then
yeah,
slowly doing less of it or mixing it up with a little bit of other stuff. I'm sure he'll come around. Like garter snakes. I mean, to be fair, Sylvanite, my female, will randomly just decide she doesn't like fish. So I try, and with the garters, I really do try to avoid doing too many rodents because they're notorious for getting overweight from that sort of thing. Because in the wild, it's not really something they're eating. Like I'm sure it's completely healthy to offer as part of a well-rounded variety,
Right.
and they can eat pinkies and whatnot, and rodents. But a lot of people just power feed them on rodents, and that's really not a natural
Yeah.
thing for them. And yeah, they grow super fast and get to a breeding size in like a year or whatever, but that's not healthy. So I would, advise strongly to, rotate between different types of fish, and if you can, frogs, frog legs, and then the chicken hearts, and just making sure you also worry about what is it, thigh mace or whatever am
Right.
I
Yeah.
pronouncing?
Yeah.
I just have to make sure you're not doing too much of that, and or supplementing according to like balance that out. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
that would help.
I looked for chicken hearts today and I couldn't find them. I think you have to actually go to like the butcher person and
Really,
ask for it because I
we
didn't see
have
any out. But that is
interesting.
something that I've considered.
Yeah, most of our grocery stores have them. There's always like if you go in the chicken area, they'll just have a few random packages and they're super cheap. It's like $1 or two for a thing of like, because I don't think that many people use them. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully you find them. They're
Yeah.
I don't think there's any grocery store around here, surprisingly, that doesn't have them. But yeah, it's not for
Yeah, you
everyone. I'm sure.
usually here local to me, they come in a like a yogurt container, that plastic sided with a
Oh,
regular
really?
snap-on lid, and there's probably 10, 15, maybe even 20 in there for
Yeah,
$4 or $5. They're very inexpensive. I've
yeah,
substituted the diet of monitors and tegus and things like that with it. It's just a cheap, easy meal to put in the refrigerator and be able to take out,
yeah,
feed one bucket across 10 or 12 animals in a week and then don't buy it again for 3 or 4 months.
yeah, yeah. No, they're pretty. Yeah, they seem very receptive to eating that as well. So, but if they're very young, again, you can just with garters, it's easy. You can just chop things up into finer pieces, and they just go crazy and eat a lot and enjoy it usually. So,
Yeah.
hopefully that helps, or hopefully he'll come around.
Yeah. So now that we got the little, the side note, health checkup section out of the way.
Greg had a husbandry question. That's what it was.
Yeah, yeah, husbandry.
Very
Yes, exactly. Yeah, husbandry question.
Oh,
Um,
there we go.
I mean, so speaking of husbandry, um, what you have there, what you do as far as husbandry and what you provide is it's awesome. Like especially the red eye crocodile skinks with like
help.
having all that cover from um
Those.
the pathos. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, it's like a lot of pathos, but
they like
that's
it.
like that's like an awesome habitat for them.
Thank
You
you.
know,
I appreciate it.
yeah, that's like one of the things that drew me to your channel in the beginning was just how like knowing a little bit, knowing enough about the red-eye crocodile skink and seeing that like dense foliage in there, I was like, that's awesome because I've seen people keep them like leopard geckos.
Yeah, they don't. They won't.
Very like open, and I'm just like, oh no.
No. Yeah, they. I mean, it's funny when you keep them with a lot more dense foliage and hiding places, you actually see them more because they feel safer coming out. They know there's something right there to go back and hide under. So yeah, they're very shy animals, and I try to always make that clear to people because I know that sometimes I have a few individuals that I've worked with for a long time that are like tongue feeding and whatnot, especially the captive bred animals I've produced. Like they're a world's difference. They're still pretty shy, but like they're pretty receptive to tongue feeding. But yeah, they're generally very shy, secretive animals, if you were. They're crepuscular in nature too. Like I joke, so I have a rack of leap enclosures now that were graciously provided to me by Leap Habitats, and so I set those all up to house crocodile skinks, the Tribolonotus novaginea, so the white eyes, and some of
Mhm.
the Tigracillus red eyes. And they've grown in nicely. Every time I come in and out of the room, especially at dusk, you just hear like all this rustling because as I enter the room, all the skinks that were out and about at dusk are just bolting back into hiding. They don't really like like they kind of get used to you or they don't, but like it's just funny. Like I don't think about it. I'm going over to the computer desk to edit or whatever, and you just hear all the leaves and plants rustling because all the
That's so
skinks that
funny.
were out. But no, it's been a very exciting project, and I'm very happy with how things are going. And just in recent months has been kind of navigating away from the more paludarium setup to see how the deep water dishes suit the animals, and I'm finding that it works just as well. And for the purpose of sort of breeding on a larger scale, it's sort of even more conducive to making it easier
Right.
to manage. Just because I don't know, I kind of explained this in one of the episodes that I really love those setups back there, and I'm still using them, but it's very tedious to manage having a water feature.
Yeah.
I went through several methods of filtration, and they just bring soil into it and it clogs them and they make tons of noise. And I mean, sometimes the filters run, but one, it's a little dangerous, right? You know, your motor, if it gets clogged, then it's screaming and could be potentially electric fire hazard, whatever. And then second to that is like every time I had to film, I just unplug all of them because it's so much
Right.
background noise, right? So it's like this is not making sense. But funny enough, I also then figured that when I test the water, ammonia nitrites and nitrate levels weren't really anything to be concerned about because of how much pothos is in there. And
Yeah.
it's absorbing all of that. So yeah, the water's gross, and once in a while, and I show this in videos, I'd go in, I'd let the water drop and just provide them with water dishes and go in there and scoop out the gravel and clean it a bit and then replenish the water periodically. Because yes, you are still getting a lot of waste and stuff in there. But overall, like I just don't have filters in there anymore, and it works. But still, these are those side opening tanks, and it's kind of an annoying system. So now that I know how well the leaps are working, I think I'm gonna probably end up moving all the croc skinks to some type of front opening enclosure. And yeah, but almost all the pairs of crocodile skink now are reproducing and doing well, so it's really great.
Yeah, that's
There's a
awesome.
few, yeah, thank you. I haven't really meddled with too many of the pairs that I put together in December in the leap habitats. There's one of them in there that for sure has an offspring. I've seen bolt out and grab a cricket and hide again, so it's very exciting. But the newer pairs of white eyes, I don't know if they're breeding yet or not, but I I let them do their thing. Like most of them, within a year or so of being introduced or in my care, like if they're paired up, they'll still start breeding on their own, and then once they get going, they don't
They
stop.
never stop. Yeah.
They're pretty consistent. Like they're just one egg every 75 days, and they sometimes take a break, but it's not even a seasonal thing. It's just on their own terms, really. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's
In nature, that's probably linked to food resources and things that they know would be
sure,
available at the time of year. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
neat.
and
That's really neat.
yeah, yeah. But thanks for the compliment about the enclosures. I'm flattered. I
Yeah.
mean, there's always room for improvement, and pothos isn't exactly that exciting. It's a very hardy
But it
plant. It
works.
works well. It
It
can
works.
work in the water, right, and the soil, and it's
Yep.
pulling out the nutrients. I mean, I use it in the Chinese crocodile, the Shinisaurus paludarium as well. I mean, to be fair, the kangaroo fern is like outcompeted it now, which is really funny. But yeah, there's a lot of pothos in there too, and it really helps maintain the water parameters
Yeah.
with large lizards too. So
Yeah, and that's a really big benefit to pothos is that ability to exist both on land and in the water. I mean,
yeah,
it's really kind of seconded to nothing that's
oh
that
yeah,
hardy, right?
sure. You
I
can literally grow it in water with no
right,
soil if you
right.
wanted to, like as long as it's not too stagnant and anaerobic or whatever. It's you can take a cutting and just grow it in like a little jar,
Yep,
Yeah.
and as long as it's
it'll
getting
take over.
nutrients,
Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be fine.
So speaking of like a lot of plants and you know natural like filtering and this and that, you was this maybe a year ago or so you went to Costa Rica?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was that was that series of videos you released from Costa Rica were awesome.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's funny. Uh, I laugh because I actually have one more video to put out for that series, but I just never got around to it, and I kept wanting to put out like regular pet related content, and then Madagascar came along, which I assume we're going to talk about at some point.
Nope.
And then I was like, oh, I don't want to just put this out in the middle of this, so it's just going to have to wait. But I'll eventually release the fifth, I think, episode for Costa Rica, and that'll close the door for that series. But yeah, it was a fantastic trip. I really had fun putting together that trip and going on. We had a great time.
So when you were there, did you, other than like the tour guides, how did the people that are local like treat people coming in from like the US and Canada? You know, how was like the atmosphere there? Was it like, were they receptive? Were they curious? Did they want to learn?
Yeah, I mean, everyone I met was very warm and hospitable. We, of course, Christian was our guide from CR Wild, and he's like, by the end of that trip, it felt like I'd known him for like 5 to 10 years, and he was like a dear friend of mine. I
Nice.
mean, besides, we were like bunking all together and different lodging and stuff, and just so many good laughs, food, etc., and long chats about anything. Just on the long hours of driving across the country in just 7 days. Not that it's a very big country, but still, yeah. So, but that was him, and then all the people we were meeting along the way through him. Their various local guides at each location we'd stop, and sure, it's a part of the tour, but there were elements that weren't necessarily part of the experience that were just offered to us by different families or local guides we met. So, as an example, one of our guides, Miguel, he and his wife just randomly invited us over to their home for tea. So we visited their home and were
That's
there for
awesome.
tea, and like that didn't have to happen. That was just
Yeah.
out of the kindness of their heart and their hospitality. And I mean, I don't want to give things away, but I wouldn't call it a medical emergency. But I had something happen in the South Pacific that required medical intervention, and I was driven out back into the closest town, and like a few families, it was like pretty late at night, like wanted to help and try and remedy the issue. I'm leaving it like ambiguous, but I've toyed or shared on like Instagram. But I'll just say, like, basically in the jungles in the South Pacific, I had an insect fly into my ear canal, and it was like a larger insect, and it went like all the way in and was
That freaks
basically
me out.
breakdancing on my eardrum, and you can't reach it there, and it like affected me so much that I even like my buoyancy was affected, my balance, like
Yep.
not buoyancy, but
It's all
like
good.
I was buoyant, I started floating. No, yeah, so it was messed, and I can't even explain it, guys. It's a little scary, like there's something literally moving around and buzzing in your ear, and like you can't you like press against your ear, you're going like this, you're moving your jaw like a camel, chewing anything to debilitate or stop it or make it come out, but like I could feel that it forced its way past those like I don't know. Well, I don't think the hairs there create hydrophobicness. It's the wax too, or whatever. It really pushed and it hurt, and
Right.
then it didn't, and it was just in that open space and buzzing. It
Oh,
was the worst feeling. It's like a combination of itchy
nope.
and I'm just going nuts. And yeah, so eventually, like Adam Wickens and Mike and Nadia and all of them were like trying to see if they could see it, and I'm like, I'm telling you, it's there. Like I know, blah blah blah. And they're trying to pour water in, and of course, it just sits there. It doesn't go down. But
Right.
eventually, it started going through and to my sinuses, and like I could feel the water go through the ear and into like the back of my throat. And I don't know, the bug was still there, but I think eventually we were able to drown it. And anyway, so I was rushed to some local clinic an hour away. And before that, there was a family that we again visited for part of the tour. The wife like woke up and came out, and she was, I guess, I don't know if she was a nurse or something. She didn't have tools and stuff. She tried to like peer in and use tweezers, but they didn't want to damage my hearing or poke around
Right.
in there. But the point of the matter is just that people were very accommodating and considerate and kind, and I think that that's the general attitude of Costa Rican people. Like everyone's very warm and
Inviting
yeah,
and friendly.
hospitable, and yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. People aren't
that's
like
great.
closed off, and yeah,
Yeah, the reason I asked too is just because I know, you know, humans have like a history of sort of like just encroaching like wherever. Um, so I've always been curious because I've never traveled. I've never traveled outside the country,
okay,
first of all.
yeah,
And I've always just wondered how, people react to people from outside the country,
sure, like
so
tourists and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't want to create any sort of negative connotation, but perhaps it's worth mentioning that you still have to exercise like caution, and because
yep.
there are parts of the country that experience poverty, which is correlated to, in some cases, levels of crime and whatnot. So you have to be smart. I mean, if you're screaming tourists and you have like a bunch of expensive equipment on you and stuff, then yeah, you could become the target of theft or something like that, right? So you don't want to just have these things out. I mean, it depends again where you are. I'm
I
not
mean, that
saying
also that
everyone.
also could be said with any country across the entirety of the
Absolutely,
world. And anywhere you
absolutely.
go, yeah, yep,
Yeah, I'm
yep,
sure there are parts of the states you wouldn't do that in either. So
right.
that same principle or concept applies. I mean, I have heard of people being robbed in Costa Rica. I've also heard of people being robbed on my street in Canada. So,
Right.
but overall,
Exactly, exactly.
yeah. But yeah, what I would like to share with you both is that, yeah, in my limited experience of being there 7 days, I could not say I was happier. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's just so generous with people were so generous with their time. Even the first place we stayed, I forgot to mention, it was a beautiful, like kind of gated property with beautiful gardens and like farm animals and different fruits. And every morning, the gentleman who was responsible for kind of like the groundsman, if you will, or if that's the right term, he would take us out and we machete like we chop coconuts and drink that. I'm sure you may have seen that in the videos, and then he'd give us different fruits to try, all fresh. And it was like, man, you don't have to do this. Like we're just here
Right.
with our guide to go herping. Like, and he every morning, like after the breakfast, and like he wasn't being paid to do that,
Yeah.
and it was very nice of him, and it made the experience more intimate and amicable, and then you build
Good.
more connections, and yeah, and then that's how we created the joking Pipa Squad name, because the pipa is a coconut type of
Hmm.
coconut there, and so we call ourselves the Pipa Squad, Adam, Natty, and Mike and I, because we would have coconuts every morning, drink coconut milk, and eat the coconut milk. So but yeah, it was a
Awesome.
beautiful country. I'd love to make my way back, but it's tricky because you have to budget all these things. I'm not rich or anything, but it's like, okay, well, do I go back to Costa Rica, or do I save up for another country I'd love to visit that I
Right.
haven't been to? And same
Right.
goes for Madagascar. It was an amazing trip, and I'd love to go back, but I'd probably go somewhere else I haven't been before I went back there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what
How
was? Go ahead.
do you find it hard to travel with the groups of animals that you personally have to care for? I mean, is that something that like do you have a dedicated person that takes over when you're not there? I guess is more my questioning. Like, is it
Yeah.
a always a really hard situation, or do you just say, "Hey, I'm gonna go and this is the dates and I need you to do this"?
Yeah, so I had one of my dear friends, Braden, has up until now been my animal caregiver, and I also one time I traveled with him in Florida for Animal Con last year, and my friend Stephanie did some work for me while we were gone for that. It was like, I guess we were gone for a week. So yes, I have had up until end of January or so a dedicated animal caregiver for trips, and part time was helping me with my own just work in the room weekly.
Right.
However, he and his fiance recently moved out of the city too far away to continue working for me. So I've reverted back to doing it all myself, which is fine. I mean, I was
Right.
never keeping more animals than I could handle on my own. It's just to help me have more time to edit and whatnot.
Right. Right.
It's
Right.
a bit
Right.
of an adjustment. But yeah, so I have to start looking to find someone
Yeah.
again, because if I want to be able to travel, which I certainly do, I need to find someone. And that's not an easy process. You know, Braden is
Nope.
magical. He's a God sent gentleman, because he has the same passion and drive, and he's kept quite an array of different species throughout his childhood into adulthood, whether it's different iguanas, golden mantellas, different dart frogs, and he still keeps a lot of cool stuff. Turtles, monitors, you name it. So he knows what he's doing, and I can fully entrust him to take care of everything. But you know, it's tricky in my position because there's so many different types of animals. There's so many animals. And that was also part of the reason, going back to why I stopped keeping Europlatus, is just because the Madagascar leaf-tailed geckos, it wasn't conducive to the not newfound desire, but just newfound, well, yeah, desire to travel more and
Yep.
document wildlife and
Yep.
be able to show how these animals are living in the wild and help, you
Yep.
know, offer a glimpse into that world and how we can further recreate that in captivity, etc. It wasn't conducive to that because there are very few people that can, not to say keep adult leaf-tailed geckos, but especially with my goal of being able to reproduce them with how delicate the offspring can be, it's hard to
Right.
put that on someone, and if they're not thriving while I'm away, it's like I can't be the one doing this. Then I have to pick and choose. So I
Right.
really do love leaf-tail geckos, and I'd like to keep them again. I don't know. I have to figure it out, but yeah. So it's hard finding someone, and you have to find
Yeah.
someone you trust. You have to, and how do you do that? You know, because you can
And
conduct it.
it's probably not
Right.
even just trust either. It's also with the ability to be able to do it. I'm sure you have
Oh
friends
yeah,
that you've
yeah,
trusted for years, but they may not be reptile
sure.
oriented or what have you. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a perfect storm you have to find. Yeah.
Yeah, because at the end of the day as well, and I'm not like a nervous, anxious person about these sort of things, but I also exercise caution. Is that the reality is, like, I also have a lot of animals that are sort of uncommon, and regardless of that, I wouldn't want to be inviting someone into my home who might have negative intentions, you know?
Yeah.
So it's hard to find that too, is like making sure that you are welcoming someone into, because I do this from home. I don't have some type of
Right.
facility at this time that everything's like, oh, whatever, locked up. So, I mean, my home's locked, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, you know, whoever's coming to my home, I have to be able to trust them. I need to know that they're competent. So
Yep.
that process is it's going to take a bit of time to find someone again. I mean, I do have, as I mentioned, my friend Stephanie did it for me once, and I would probably, as a first option, see if she's interested in continuing to do that. Um, we'll see from there. Yeah. But yeah, so to answer your question, absolutely. Like, I have someone
Yeah.
has to come here and
Yeah.
manage everything while I'm away. And it is a bit nerve-wracking too, like not just making sure everything is good to go before, but also, you know, you worry while you're away. It's like your family, right? So,
Yep.
you know, and at the end of the day, no matter how good someone is, they're never doing it the same way you are with your own animals. So,
Right.
um,
Right.
so it's, you know, you have to find that perfect person, but you're still going to worry regardless, right? And it's just such a relief when you get home and you know everybody's okay, and or you get that one call while you're away and you're holding your breath to make sure. It's like, oh yeah, I just wanted to check in and hope everything's
Yep.
well. Like,
Yep.
oh
Yep.
dude,
Yep.
don't talk to me. I thought something bad happened.
You
No, I'm kidding.
look down at your phone and you see that missed call and you're like, oh no.
Yeah. But yeah, such is life. I can't imagine how it'll be when you have kids too, or when I have kids one day. But you just, it's different when you have like a big group of animals and you're worrying about that. And, I mean, I don't. I think I found the sweet spot of thinking about it while I'm away and not letting it over worry me. You know, I need to also be in the moment. Like, these trips they take a lot mentally, physically, etc. I mean, I'm blessed and I'm very thankful that I get to organize and be a part of these types of trips, but It's funny when people are like, "You're so lucky. You like must be such a nice." I mean, I am lucky. Don't get me wrong, but or they kind of make it sound like it's a vacation in the way they
Right.
articulate it, right? Like,
Right.
oh no, that's not what it is.
Yeah.
Like, it's so draining, and you have to be constantly, especially when the camera's rolling, you got to be
Yeah.
a bit sensational and then
Yep.
enthusiastic, even if
Yep.
you feel exhausted because you're running on 4 or 5 hours of sleep
Right.
the last 3 days and other things. So and you're hiking all day. Like Madagascar was very tiring. It was a
Yeah.
very tiring trip, and it's funny because in that video it kind of shows like or in some of the content, like I look back at it, I'm like, damn, I didn't realize I looked like that in that
Yeah.
scene. Because I just seemed kind of like, yeah, so this is but in my head I thought I was like, yeah, like, so this is but I was exhausted, and I mean, that's part of the authenticity, I suppose, but no, that they're great trips. It's just,
But at the same time, that is a very important thing.
sure.
It's 7 days of work, and it may not sound like work, but you're walking constantly. You're always trying to figure out what the next thing's going to be. And
Hmm.
for your group of friends who were doing it, you were making conscious decisions to film certain things or film all of it. I'm not sure how you go about it, but you have to make sure that you're doing X, Y, and Z consistently, or those 7 days became not necessarily worthless, but there is no big payout as far as content for social media, whatever that may entail. So you really always have to be thinking, and I'm sure that's quite tiring. I know it's tiring just trying to make content, and I don't do anything. I just take a few pictures here and there, and I'm tired, so I can only even imagine. And then you balance that with probably thoughts of what's going on at home for people of your stature with the amount of animals that you have, and the kind of animals that you have, like you referenced before. So it's probably very taxing to create all of those videos that you did, and to tell us that you didn't even release all of them from Costa Rica means there's even one more that we
Yeah.
haven't seen yet that you did in 7 days. It's gotta be taxing. Taxing probably isn't
Yeah.
even the right word. It's gotta be exhausting.
Yeah. Well, and then
Probably came back and
Madagascar.
slept for a week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not even. What
Yeah.
happened
No.
after that? I'm trying to remember. I think, well, most of the time I have to just hit the ground running right away because
Of
it's like
course.
content to put out for the following week. But yeah, I would love to be able to do what you said. But and Madagascar was the longest trip I've done like that so far because that was actually 2 weeks of that.
Wow.
So it's a lot. I mean, it was an incredible, magical trip, but
Right.
it's
Yeah.
also
Just
very.
just because it's tiring doesn't mean it takes away from the experience.
No, of
Yeah.
course
No,
not.
no, no, no.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to say that in any way.
No, I didn't think that at all. I mean, I'm the one who's just brought that up to share that it's just funny because
Yeah.
I guess we do a good job of hiding it that it's so
You
tiring.
very much so. I mean, for
But
someone who
yeah,
takes care of a lot of animals, that in and of itself, I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed is not in my repertoire of things I would describe myself as. But when I do, public education, when I do my lectures and things, it doesn't matter if I just came off of
yeah,
5 days of heavy animal work or what have you. It is, you got to put the smile on your face. You got to stand there in front of 200 people, and you got to be as positive and smiley and happy as possible.
yeah,
Part of it is natural passion and enjoyment that I get from education anyway. So it's probably the same thing when you guys are on camera and you're in Costa Rica talking. That tired feeling is probably not even existent, really. You know what I mean? It's I'm going to tell my fans about this, and I want to talk about this. So I'm sure it's very relatable in that fact.
hmm
And it is
On a much
interesting
grander
too.
scale, of course.
It's interesting too, coming from talking about like social media,
I'll be right
which
back.
all right, which includes creating YouTube content. I mean, we have a small channel. My Instagram is a small Instagram page. But I find myself doing things for the Instagram page, for the YouTube, instead of doing them for like pure enjoyment. Like
right.
traveling. Nick and I haven't traveled overseas. I haven't been anywhere extravagant, other than Florida, and that was like 20 years ago. but I have driven at, some cases I've driven 4 hours to spend 2 hours taking photographs of 5 snakes to drive 4 hours back home. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah, like it was, awesome to be there. I made a friend in the process. But I did it so I would have like a handful of pictures to be able to display, on Instagram or however else. And that, that's not that much work, but when you're talking about what it's for, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of energy, to put out there, for you don't even know what reason, really, because whether it's videos or whether it's like Instagram posts or TikTok videos, whatever it is, you never know how it's going to go. You don't know how it's going to do. Are people going to see it? Like I'll take a great picture of something and I'll post it, or I'll make like what I think is like a really like top-notch reel, and I'll post it and like 20 people will like it. But I'm going to keep putting that content out there. I'm going to keep doing it. But it really, the world of social media means something completely different to me than it did like 3 years ago. It's just a completely different, it's part of my life now. It's like I'll come in to do something, but I always make sure that I have my phone with me when I come to, miss some of the enclosures or, change the water or do whatever, checking on them, because you never know what you're going to see. It's these little creatures, like, I mean, at least for this group of us right here, like they're small creatures for the most part, are capable of a lot of entertainment. They definitely provide a lot of entertainment.
I'm the exact opposite. I don't ever remember to bring my phone with me, and I've had thousands of experiences working with animals that I'm like, should have recorded that. That would have been pretty interesting. I just a couple days ago. So really long story, really, really short, abridged version. I have an Ackie monitor. It came into the rescue. It's super skittish. It's an adult, and it came in last October sometime. Haven't seen it in 6 months, almost at all. And it was sitting on the log, and I was like, okay, let's try and feed you with tongs and see what happens. Open up the enclosure door. The Ackie monitor didn't run away. Cool, we're halfway there. All right, put a dubia roach in the tong. Bring the tong to the not right in front of her face, but then put it gently into the tip of the enclosure, and she ran right towards it, grabbed it, and ran away. And I went, I should have recorded that. And it happens weekly. And I'm with my content, anything that we produce from the rescue, it's all about education. It's never anything but education. We do some little goofy memes sometimes here and there, but we have a Serious Sunday post, which we try and it's a very educational thing. Some of them we go in depth. Dion, the person who writes them is the young lady with the indigo that we talked about off camera a little while ago. And I write like a 5-year-old, so any long form content that's written through the rescue is not me. I am like 4 sentences and maybe I sound coherent. She writes all of that longer form content, and she's amazing. But it's always like really well researched, really well looked through, made sure that it's contemporary and factual, and everything is the I's are dotted, T's are crossed and whatnot. And it's all about that. But sometimes those, like Greg was saying, those posts that you think are going to be phenomenal and go far, they don't go anywhere. And you're like super proud of them. I did a whole series on crocodilians as far as the information we were sharing. And like that group did really well. Venomous snakes always does really well as well. At pretty much any time you say the word venomous, it skyrockets through the world. But we did several other things like this snake shedding content thing. I forget
Yeah.
exactly what the post was, and it went ballistic everywhere. It was hysterical, and I'm like, how do 11,000 people like this? I don't get it. I don't understand. We talked about king cobras last week. Like, what is
Yeah. It,
what is happening here? It was
yeah.
literally like the picture of a small shed skin, and that was it. And it did, it was very well received by the social media platforms we use. Um, Not that I want this to go into crazy social media stuff, but like at this point, as a business entity of the rescue, the financial side of it, if you don't have social media, you don't exist. And I
Sure.
think a lot of businesses are going through that in 2023. If
Mhm.
you don't have a decent following, nobody trusts you as in terms of the services you may offer or what have you. Um, and I mean, for me, it's like, well, that stinks because there's some really awesome things out there that they don't know how to do social media. I'm old. I'm a dinosaur. I don't like social media. I do it, but I don't like it.
Yeah.
And it probably comes off that way. It really does. This podcast series and doing YouTube videos and things like that, I actually really enjoy that. It's direct
Mhm.
it's direct information sharing, and I think that's the benefit to social media is the educational side and the huge reach that you could potentially make, not unlike yourself being well versed in a lot of different species and sharing your examples and experiences with the rest of everybody is really a good what am I trying to say, is really a good use of that global reach.
Right.
I went on to our Facebook page and I saw that I have followers on our Facebook page in other countries, and I was like, wow, really?
Be
That's
cool.
that's strange, but okay, I'll take that. You know, and at the same time, it's really like humbling how small the world has gotten because of these social media sites that you can share
Yeah.
something with somebody that lives in Costa Rica or
Yeah.
Rio or any Middle East or some
Mhm.
Australia. I have friends in Australia that talk to me more than some of the friends I've had here for 20 years. So it's just really remarkable to see all of this come full circle. And for herping, it's brings a new level of that information sharing, just like this podcast. We've done, Greg, how many episodes have we done? We've done two so far in this series.
Yeah,
Right, two, right?
this is the
So what?
third.
This is the third. Okay, so one of the gentlemen that we interviewed already is, working with endangered species, in Georgia, and he has had a few experiences of being out and obviously, I mean, that's his job. Sorry, but it is, and seeing really neat endangered species, and then he can share those on his direct social media posts. And even though his direct social media may not necessarily be part of this educational or wildlife catering entity, he can still share those experiences with anybody that he may have passed in his travel. It's just a remarkable situation. Just like, again, you, not to take anything away from you, I mean, your experiences are
No, not at all.
top notch, but it's just really nice to be able to see that across a huge group of people can now share all of their positive experiences. And we need to make
Uh,
social media positive and tell everybody else to go, just, you want to be a keyboard warrior, just stop talking and go somewhere else.
I mean, just like anything, like it can be such a positive and powerful tool, right?
Yep,
To
exactly.
communicate and share information and whatnot. So I think that part of what you were saying with like how people don't really exist without uh, a social media presence is sort of a testament to how that tool is so powerful, and it's created sort of a new standard of engagement and authenticity because
Right.
a lot of businesses or institutions or you name it like use this tool, and it offers a lens or view into what they're doing and working with, and it adds that credibility.
Yeah.
It's not to say it's not there without it, but when people take advantage of using it and sharing that, it definitely creates more receptivity to what they're working with and doing, you as the viewer or the person considering engaging with whatever it is they're doing. It's like, wow, look at that. Like this rescue did this, or they brought in this animal. Look at the before and after, or look at the work they're doing. I want to support that. So tapping into that has limitless opportunity.
Right.
But it demands a lot of work as well. And it requires, as you said, like, removing the negativity from it. Like you want to have an elevated standard and make sure what you're sharing is accurate and truthful, and because
Mhm.
otherwise you fall into the negative side, and
Right.
it can create problems as well with that level of vulnerability and exposure, right? You can there's misinformation, etc., that can create a whole other problem. But with the responsibility, it's a powerful tool, great tool in my opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
I
is.
agreed. Of course, yes. I think its benefits far outweigh any negative situation
Mhm.
that so
Mhm.
far, especially myself, have dealt with at all. I definitely think that the positive outcome and desired effect of this social media world we live in is far better than the negative.
Yeah.
Um, like here we are now. You're in Canada, I'm in New York, and he's in Connecticut, and we're all having a conversation, and we can see each other.
Yeah.
It's not like we're just on the phone or anything. It's
Yeah.
pretty amazing stuff here.
Yeah,
It
and
is.
one of the I'm not I'm not turning this negative, but just to make a point, one of the downfalls, I think, especially with I mean, I'm sure for some people like Instagram and TikTok, it's like this too, but I know with YouTube, um, not that I have a couple of shorts that did really well, um, but there's this like drive to for growth, where like if I have a video that gets X amount of interactions, likes and comments and stuff,
Yeah.
um, I have to try and replicate that, but replicate it differently, um, which tends, which leads to getting away from something else that I might want to do.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
because if the goal is to, um, you know, teach and entertain like in one piece, I have to put aside some of the things that I want to do if I
Right.
want to keep like the channel growing or my
Yeah.
Instagram growing. Um,
Compromising something.
yeah, a lot
Yeah.
of compromising. Um, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do the Herper series is because I know, this is like an extremely small channel, and I know that, our reach is, nothing compared to so many other people. But the goal is to try and get content about like what happens outside of our like reptile room
Right.
to be as popular as what happens inside the reptile room.
Sure.
Like, I think that it's, to talk about going outside and like seeing what we find out there and talking about habitats and stuff like is like, to me, that's like top notch stuff. That's the stuff that I watch. But I know that that's not the stuff that most people watch, and I know that from talking to other people, it's, you know, people put a lot of time and effort into their, you know, videos of traveling, and going to these places. But what those videos do compared to what you know,
Yeah.
their videos that they make of their pets at home, it's like a world of difference.
Yeah. That's
Um,
highly relatable. Yes.
yeah. So I think, I really hope that we can somehow kind of shift that, because there's room for everybody,
Hmm.
you know. Um, I'm not sure where I was going with that.
I mean, I think, Greg, you're talking a lot about the ability for people who may have a couple corn snakes that happen upon a channel talking about pets. you're giving them a glimpse into what could be outside if they're not just focused on their reptile pet. Maybe they live in Arizona and they could go, video something in the wild and enjoy that sort of interaction with the same style of animals they may have
Mhm.
in their own home. It's really just an introduction of education. It's possibilities. Like I've never been to Costa Rica, so watching Dion's videos are incredible, or Adam Wicken, or anybody who's traveled the world. It's really nice to be able to have that experience through others, and I think that's one of the reasons why if you present it, I mean, you have to obviously be a good storyteller too. That's a big part of it. But if you present that information positively and really really well, it does really well as well, because
Right.
people are living so vicariously through that YouTube video or what have you. Do you find that your videos of travel do better than your pet videos, or do you have enough of a group of following because you do such specific stuff that your pet videos do much much better?
Yeah, so I think this kind of touches on the topic of niching down and
Okay.
how this is, it's not something we necessarily do systematically, but um, I think, Greg, you mentioned also, um, it's, yeah, like, I mean, when you build a channel and you have sort of specific subject material, people start to follow you for a certain type of thing. And although we could probably all agree that showing a lot of the animals we keep in captivity as pets and whatnot in the wild would be relatable to that subject material. It's often different enough that a lot of people aren't as interested. And I know you were saying sometimes you have to kind of juggle with this idea of compromising sort of what you want to do or share for the sake of, I guess, engagement and bringing more people into the conversation and growing. But I would also um, encourage anyone to consider that what's really important. And I mean, yes, you're always balancing that. I don't disagree, especially if you take it to the level of creating a career out of it. You have to, because the views equals revenue in some regards. But I would also, if you have the freedom and flexibility not to, like, to continue to authentically be yourselves and share exactly what you want to share, because that is how you will build an audience around that. So in my own case with the herping versus pets, no, I mean, it's not a versus, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
I definitely find that, yes, 100% my pet related content of my own animals outperforms herping content tenfold. Like, I mean, that might be a slight exaggeration, but to be completely honest with you, I'm feeling a bit disheartened or, um, yeah, like, I guess disheartened by how few people are choosing to watch my Madagascar videos compared to the regular content I post. Because it is a lot of work to put those videos together.
Yeah.
Never mind, as we discussed before, physical, mental strain of
Right.
being there as much as you're loving every moment. You come back, and putting these sorts of videos together is a grandiose operation. If you're doing it by yourself, you're editing everything. In many cases, there's a lot of narration that needs to be written out and make sense, and then be recorded to, for audio layover and whatnot. Like, you're narrating to depict what's going on. And then, you hit upload and you hold your breath and get excited just like any other video. And to see a third, if not a fourth of the views you would, it's only getting a fourth or a third or two or whatever of the views it would get if it were your regular type content. Yeah, it's discouraging. And in my case, I like to see things through, and I have a very particular way of sharing those experiences. I want everyone to see, like, the behind the scenes and whatnot. I want to share the whole trip and make you feel like you're there for the journey. So yeah, from a business perspective, maybe it's not smart for me to keep putting out those videos as regularly as I do, because they're just, like, not performing very well. But I want to see it through, and I want the whole expedition to be there. And so I've
Right.
put out 8 videos about this trip, but yeah, a lot of them aren't performing well. I have a few that have a solid amount of views, like over 40,000, but for the majority, they don't even have 10,000 views, and relative to the rest of my content, that's not very good.
Right.
But going back to the authenticity and whatnot, like that's something I genuinely want to share. It's something I'm proud of. I'm proud of the videos. Like I'm not some pro editor by any means, but I'm proud of what I'm sharing with the world. And yeah, I think they're also in some regards slow burners. Like people are finding the videos, and even the oldest ones from back in late January and early February are still gaining views when I look at the analytics. But yeah, like I wanted to share that experience, and it's a body of work that, like the Costa Rica videos, I'm proud of, to be able to go back randomly and relive the experience too, in a way,
Right.
because much as you remember things from the past, like there's little things you forget. And I think the way I've put them together, it's really like a jump in on the adventure. And so as long as I'm proud of what I'm putting out, and I don't care too much about the views, but then when it ties into the business side of things, that like I am doing this as my livelihood, yeah, it's discouraging. And I think for the most part, I don't experience burnout, but I'm finding with this series, I kind of, I hate to say, I almost want to get it over with, because I need to get back to making my normal content. Like right now,
Right.
I have what I think will probably be 2 episodes left. I would probably say I'd have had 4, if not more, but I've chosen to try and compile them, or make 2 longer ones, just to make
Out
it
of
like,
it.
yeah, just
Yep.
finished, because no one's ever complained. Everyone seems to really love the content, but like those are only the people that are watching it.
Right.
So I
Right.
think a
Right.
lot
Right.
of my regular viewers want to see the pets again. And I mean, I that's a whole other thing, but I used to post twice a week quite regularly, and more recently I've been doing mostly once a week. But I mean, I was there's just a lot going on here with like renovations and
It's
other
yeah.
things. And so, I mean, if I get back to twice a week, then yeah, it's no problem, because you're still complementing the one video with what people normally see. But when you're putting out one video a week and it just doesn't perform the way it should, it's like it's more scary, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, right now the plan is the next video is going to be a big long Madagascar video. Probably do some more pet content, and then there's going to be one more big Madagascar video, and that'll close off the series for that. But yeah, big elaborate answer to say yes. The herping content just does
That's
not
okay.
does
We
not perform the way the rest of it does, and it sucks, because I have friends that you could probably guess do the same sort of thing, and even in some cases have traveled with me, and some of them, they experience that same feeling I do, and for them, they've chosen to not post herping videos because they don't want it to hurt their channel. And maybe I'm an idiot for doing it, but like, nah, I'll share it. But yeah, like it sucks, man. It's awful
yeah.
when it doesn't do as well. But I think again, it's also important to consider that if it's something you really would like to share, do it, and you can also hope that it'll attract a different audience too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's plenty of people that do appreciate that herping, and I'm very
Right. I
touched
mean,
by, yeah,
over the next 5 years, some of these Madagascar and or Costa Rica trips could gain a lot of views over
sure,
the next 5 years, because
yeah,
maybe someone, maybe a select group of people is searching for what it's like to herp Costa Rica. Maybe you'll do well with that search versus your followers scenario playing out, which I've heard 1,000 times on YouTube.
yeah.
Instead of being a constant follower watching it, it becomes something that people search for, and your video might be the number one recommended what Madagascar's like, or something, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
It
every
could happen.
video. Yeah, I mean, I always use the analogy that like every video you put out is like you're planting a seed, right?
Hmm.
So that it's from the moment it's up till the end of time, whether it plateaus or not. It's you've planted a seed, and that plant is growing to some
Yep.
degree. So it becomes part of that garden or catalog of work
Right.
you've created, right? So
Right.
there is that side of it that's positive to look at. But I've also been very, I was saying, touched or humbled to see the receptivity. I more recently started sharing photos and links to each episode in the Herping the Globe group on Facebook. And people there seem really happy and
Yeah.
excited to see that content. So it's really encouraging. I
Right.
mean, I've
Right.
never
Right.
heard anything negative about the videos. So
Yeah.
whoever watches them seems to really like them, and that's really uplifting. But yeah, it's tough, like it's as a creator, even
Yeah.
You obviously want people to enjoy your bodies of work, and you put a lot of effort into it. And burnout is a thing we can easily experience when we overwork ourselves regardless. But when you continue to post videos that are part of a body of work like the Madagascar expedition I'm doing, and people aren't as interested in it as you would hope, and even relative to your regular work, like that can kind of make it discouraging for you. So I'm trying
Right.
not to see it that way, and overall I'm good. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to navigate through for sure.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
Absolutely.
mean, for
it
me,
helps that. Yep. Sorry, Greg. Go ahead.
yeah, no, for me, you know, what drew me to you originally and what drew me to Adam Wickens and all kinds of people were the pet videos. That's
Mhm.
why I started following. Um, but what I really love is the herping videos. I love the traveling and the herping, and but I guess the truth is at this time people want to see sky puppies. So
Yeah.
so if sky puppies are gonna do it, then sky puppies it is.
Yeah.
I mean, in
um,
some regards, I bet it has a lot to do with attainability. Let's be honest,
Sure.
a lot of people can go out and purchase those sky puppies, and not a lot of people can purchase a trip to Costa Rica for 7 days
That's
or
very true.
Madagascar for
Yeah.
14. I'm sorry, did you say you went for 14 days? I don't want to.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah,
you're
okay.
good. Yeah, 14. I mean, it was a little
And
delayed, so but yeah.
in
Um,
not, in my personal life, I have children, I have the rescue, I have things that would bar me from doing it. It may not necessarily be a financial situation, but regardless, I do have situations that would bar me from being able to take that
yeah.
much time off in a row.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
it might be a little less relatable for the general public where a monitor lizard is not unattainable. A Shinosaurus is not unattainable. Toke geckos or crocodile skinks may not be unattainable by comparison, and that might feed that. Oh, what is this? What did he have today? What did he do today? How did he feed him today? What did this animal do today? Or it could just be that
Yeah,
people really follow that storyline of in you interacting with your pets. I mean, at the end of the day, you're entertaining, and that could have a lot to do with it too.
oh, it's a great point for sure. Like I think the combination of things like the relatability, and then like I said, niching down, and
Yep.
it is, as you mentioned, like it, most of my content is paralated, so it has been a newer thing as I've been able to afford it more, network more, to gain sponsors for
Right.
sort of trip. Something new that I'm trying to do more of, or at least once a year with a bigger trip. So it is totally understandable that maybe the audience is going to be less receptive to it. It's something I also have to kind of figure out refining, because in the future, even if the trip is longer, like I don't think I will choose to make whatever 10 episodes for one trip. I think I'll try
Right.
to refine it, but it's tough to figure out where the sweet spot or the moderation is, because
Yeah.
you don't want to miss out on certain things, and I don't want my content to be so much of like we saw this and this. Like I do
Right.
want to share like this is what we ate.
Yep.
Check out like the
The whole
drive.
the
And you
whole
know that the
experience. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
But when you want to do that, it becomes a lot more content. So you have
Yep.
to find the sweet spots. And I mean, I'm sure it's something I'm going to continue to learn about and refine over time, and
I
can
mean, by
touch.
by comparison, I mean, this is going to sound absolutely terrible coming out of my mouth to talking to Dion of Reptiliatus, but this experience of you doing content like that, you're a novice. You're starting over. You're doing something different. You
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to learn how to do it,
sure.
and and that comes with time. The more you do it, the more experience you're going to get. Just like anything else in life, the better you become at it. And
Absolutely.
I look forward to seeing you travel more, but that's also because um my personal connection to you in a YouTuber viewer way is that was an awesome trip. You got to do something really cool. I'd like to do that one day, right?
Well, thank
Versus
you.
I don't really need to own a red-eye crocodile skink by comparison.
Yeah,
I just think that there's a difference in presenting information and trying really hard to do it versus doing it because you love it and presenting the outcome. Does
Oh,
that
100%.
like
Yeah, yeah,
you could force yourself to go on these trips if you didn't really want to,
yeah,
and
yeah,
your videos would perform terribly,
yeah.
regardless of the niching down or what have you.
Well,
Just
if I
because, right? Because you don't want to present the information in that way. You're just down and out, and miserable, and
And if I didn't want to do it, I sure definitely wouldn't.
Right,
If I didn't want to do it, then I definitely wouldn't do it
right,
because they don't perform as well. So
right.
that would even make it less logical. I do enjoy it. So,
Yeah, it shows. It's very clear
well,
your
thank you.
passion behind your videos. I mean, even in your pet content too. Not to take anything away from that, is very very clear.
Thank you. I
You're
appreciate it.
realistic. Your conveyance of information. Every part of that is spot on.
Thanks
Absolutely.
so much.
So
You're a
what's
YouTuber second.
Dion?
You're a YouTuber. You're a YouTuber second, and you're a reptile keeper first. It's very clear.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sorry.
So what's on the horizon, Dion? For
Yeah. What do
you
we
as
got
far
next?
as what's coming
Oh,
up for you?
um, I don't know. I've kind of gotten to a place with my, let's say, pet family, if you will, where room is limited, which I think we all run into that issue.
Yeah.
And so I'm sort of looking at everybody and going, okay, so some of these animals still have to grow. We'll need larger enclosures, etc. And I think I'd like to primarily focus on upgrading a lot of my animals, and so there's gonna be a lot of rehousing and stuff going on, as we touched on briefly with Basil randomly making his appearance before going to bed. It seems. Uh, so yeah, there's going to be the tree monitor upgrade, which is going to be a really big project that Paul from Custom Reptile Habitats has graciously been so patient about me setting that up. Because I'm embarrassed to say I've had all the components for that enclosure for quite some time and just haven't gotten around to building it yet. But yeah, that's going to be very exciting because it's going to be a whole ordeal, and it'll be an awesome habitat when it's all set up in the room. It takes up the whole wall. Like I said, it's like 2.5 feet wide by or deep, I mean, by 7 feet in length and 6 feet tall. So it's a
That's
pretty
massive.
big.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be really rewarding for the animals to live in. Yeah, it's a lot of upgrading. I think it's what I'm going to be focusing on this year. As far as traveling, there have been some ideas in the works. Nothing really like set. Most likely, I've more or less confirmed that I'll be attending Animal Con this year, so that'll be in September. Yeah, I'm not sure about the traveling. Like, I mean, Madagascar was this year, so
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
incredible. I don't know if I'll be doing any more big herping trips this year, or if it'll be saved for next year. We'll see what comes up, what opportunities arise. But I do, like I said, like I think I'm okay with being a bit more of like a homebody for the next quarter or two, and just focusing on refining the care and husbandry of the animals I have here. So I think what my audience can expect is after the Madagascar content, they're going to be seeing a lot of enclosure builds, that type of content, updates on recent enclosure builds. Like I did the glass frog paludarium back in December, I think is when I posted the video. That enclosure's grown in very nicely. So I'd like to do an update and then show my audience me introducing those frogs out of quarantine into that habitat for them to see. They chose which species by vote that they wanted going in there. So it's going to be the H. fleshmanis, the northern glass frogs that go in there.
That's neat.
Yeah, so that'll be really cool. Just waiting for it to grow in a little bit more, but I mean, overall, it looks phenomenal. I'm very happy with it. I have a few dart frog builds to make. There's a really exciting large one that's going to be for the Phyllobates terribilis mints.
Okay.
A Mexican king snake upgrade, large enclosure for my female, and garter snake enclosure, like a bioactive large enclosure. So yeah, a lot of enclosure builds.
Yep.
That sort of stuff. And then hopefully, like, I mean, breeding project wise, more stuff with the Project Mini Dragons. I will be trying to breed the leaf turtles. I just don't know. It's tricky. Like my youngest male ET is just physically too small. He has the interest, but he can't. But Littlefoot is the larger male, and I'm not sure he's big enough, but like we'll give it a shot, and hopefully he can pair up with my 3 females this year, because they're very rare turtle. It'd be nice to put more out into the world, especially in Canada with our restrictions on turtles, and importing and exporting them is basically impossible. Um, so we'll see how that goes, and then yeah, just hope crossing our fingers the Shinisaurus breed at some point.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I bet.
Yeah, I really did try to cool them down more this year or this past winter, but I just don't think I got it to where it needs to be. And I've been reluctant to actually put them in bins in like a cooler or something because I think
Yep.
we all know that sometimes if you don't do it right, you run the risk of whatever they knock over a water dish and you didn't notice or whatever, like they don't have their water that they can
Yep.
drink from if they need it, or if something faulty is and it gets too cold, like it's more risky. So in an ideal world, I would have liked to get them cold enough in their own enclosure because I have them in a basement. So I don't know. I'm worried it wasn't cold enough. But one of them is looking really chunky, so I'm just praying that she might do like a late spring birth because they sometimes do that. It's not always in the late fall that they give birth because
Oh,
they're
really?
live bearing.
So
But
they'll hold over winter too. Do
they
they
can't.
do
Yeah.
they postpone ovulation for that, or do they so they retain the sperm then, and the female can choose when to?
So yeah, they're viviparous, or so
Right.
they get yeah. So I was like, what's going on? The mister's going on.
Oh,
I was like, what? I heard the loud noise. I should know better. I'm used to this. So I think they're actually. I don't think it's that they haven't like they're just holding the sperm. I think they're actually developing over the winter. Maybe there's like
wow.
I don't know for sure.
Uh,
I couldn't tell you if it's like an internal diapause or something like that you
right.
see with certain species eggs, like a lot of the Madagascar chameleons, right? The eggs will do like a funky diapause thing when it's cold, and the incubation can be like years at
Yeah,
times.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know exactly what happens, but I know that enough people have had spring births, and that's generally not the more common thing. Maybe some females carry their term lasts over winter, and then in the spring they're giving birth. But I think I've noticed more friends having stillborn, so maybe it's not the best thing when that happens. But
Right.
nonetheless, we'll see. They're gonna get fed lots, and we'll see if hopefully in the fall the two females do something because they're such cool animals. And
They really are.
yeah,
They
I mean, you
really
guys
are.
are lucky in the States. Like at least there's more people working with them in Canada, to my knowledge. So I have my three, the 1.2, and I have a friend out in Calgary with I think he has 1.2 or something like that. I think he only has one male or maybe two males. There's very few of them
Yeah.
between hobbyists and the Toronto Zoo, which doesn't count because they're not working with hobbyists. There's very few of them, and being CITES one, we can't really get more of them or anything like that. So
Right.
everybody has to really work together as a community if we want to keep them around. Um, it's just a handful of animals, and then I think someone else has a few females, and that's about it. I think there's less than 10 in the country besides the zoo.
Wow.
So
Right.
it's a lot
Right.
of pressure. And everyone always asks how I got mine. So they came from a close friend of mine who purchased them or imported them. I think it would have been like 2015 or before they went CITES 1. And then he
Got it.
moved back to his country of origin. And I'd already told him, if you ever going to sell these, please let me know. So that's how I got my hands on them. I was very lucky. But yeah, it's a lot of pressure. Like out of all the animals I keep, probably the ones that I really like feel an intense need to reproduce because they're so uncommon. It would just
Yeah.
be a shame to lose them.
And being cities one in uh as a whole and restricted in Canada, if these groups in the hands of hobbyists do not reproduce, they're basically out of the hobby there.
Oh yeah, that's what I
Right?
mean. Yeah,
Because they're
absolutely.
no longer going to be available at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
it's
I
that's
was
what
just
I've heard.
clarifying that. That's all.
Oh no, no, sorry. Yeah, yeah,
Yep, no
sorry.
problem.
I guess I should have been more specific. But yeah,
And I mean
southern.
that happens. Look at the Chilean rose hair. I mean,
It's a good
I
point.
I'm a 40-year-old man. You could go into any pet store 20 years ago and you could buy a Chilean rose hair for $20.
Yeah,
Now, where are they?
it's true.
Oh, they
I
were
think
so cheap. They were so cheap and easy to import, nobody bothered to breed them.
yeah. We're
Oops.
lucky though in Canada. We do have a lot of like really great arachnid breeders that like they're still around.
That's good.
A lot of them are the red color form.
Okay.
not so much of the rose, the true rose hair. And then there's also the portery, right? I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, no, that's a prime
Right.
example, right?
Yep.
People under. Well, I mean, look at there's all these countries where the imports suddenly close or slow down. I mean, even tree monitors, those were abundantly imported, and they still, from what I can see on different classified pages or whatever, or like you can see that like yes, there's still wild-caught animals coming in, but people are like, oh, now you really see. I mean, obviously, it's a world's difference between a captive bred animal and wild-caught, regardless for any
Yep.
species. But people need to start doing it because a lot of these places, like there's limitation on what is
Yep.
available, and again, I've always been an advocate for, in my opinion, any wild-caught animal coming into the trade needs to just be put in the hands of competent, knowledgeable breeders. Their sacrifice of not being in the wild anymore should be to create captive bred representation. I don't personally believe
Right.
that a wild-caught animal should just be a pet.
Right.
There, so yeah, like I understand the value and necessity that if an animal is going to be in the trade, then yes, anything originally came from the wild, and but yeah, I don't like feeding the hobby with wild caught animals. So just to
Right.
make that
Yeah,
clear,
that's a
uh,
perfect. Perfect.
yeah. So, but yeah, just to also point it out, as you said, like yeah, a lot of these species that people don't bother with, and I do think in a weird way, like we see this with crocodile skinks, but it's ironic because people are somewhat discouraged to keep them because everything that is available is usually wild caught, and a lot of it is just so dehydrated, and they're a lot of them have sepsis when they arrive from Indo, and it's just a very negative experience all around. But if people would take the time to keep them properly and medicate them and whatnot. And that's why I made my series too. And I think I'm grateful it's helped a lot of people with that process. Like, but you'll see those animals, I think, not because of me by any means, but like those animals will hopefully become a lot more abundant in captive bred representation. And I think that
Right.
needs to be the case for any species in the trade. Like, and it is. I think a lot of people are really seeing the value of, I don't know. I know there are a lot of popular species kept where you have your crusties and ball pythons and beardies and whatnot and leopard geckos, but I think a lot of people are starting to see like, whoa, it's special to breed all these other animals, and we want to create captive representation of them as well. And I think diversity is becoming more abundant in the trade and the hobby. So it's something I'm happy to see.
I agree. What do you think,
Yeah.
Greg? Do you agree?
Nope, I totally disagree. I think everything that he just said
Whoa,
is
whoa,
wrong,
whoa.
is so wrong. We're not going to show this episode. This is over.
Terrible. Terrible
had it.
sarcasm. No, it's one of those situations where it's the more people keep reptiles, it's negative and positive. It's
Sure.
just like anything else.
That's a very good point. It's a good way to put it.
It's very, very much the same point. I as a rescue, we talk about endangered species and we talk about invasive species and we talk about a lot of different things. But we never really talk about breeding in terms of public eye because we want people to watch our content or view our content regardless.
Yeah.
So, but breeding to me is, you should really focus on things that aren't being bred. And I've been saying for the last 15 years, like if you can buy it on PetSmart shelves or pet store shelves in general, that it probably doesn't really need to be captive bred anymore. If it's not attainable and you don't see it that often, then maybe you should work on breeding that sort of species of animals.
Sure.
And I think that goes a long way to trying to change the minds of the kids that ask us to do a birthday party or what have you. We bring a frilled dragon instead of a bearded dragon. Why do we do that? Because frilled dragons are less abundant, and if someone was to have the experience of wanting to get into the hobby, that's an experience with an animal that's not something you can buy at PetSmart or Petco. And you have to really consciously do effort to figure out how to take care of it. You can't just walk into a pet store and purchase it and, hope for the best.
Right.
Obviously, there are mainstays which do work as first-time reptile pets in the hobby, of course. But at the same point in time, breeding those animals is where I think a lot of people they're doing it just because they can. because it's easy, because
Sure.
there's so much information shared about how to do it that they want to do it too. Whereas
Yeah.
pioneers like yourself with red-eye crocodile skinks are, doing something different. The Shinosaurus, the same thing. You're doing it for a reason that is beyond just your ability to make money and your ability to have a species breed a species under your belt. You're trying to
Yeah.
do it
Yeah.
for a very important reason. And I think sharing this style of conversation, like in this podcast, with the keepers that we talk to on a daily basis enlightens them. It changes their opinion of things. And, it's not about not doing it. It's just about understanding why we said it may not be the best choice. It's not about
Mhm.
telling somebody they can't, because usually if you tell somebody, especially here in the United States, if you tell them they can't do it, they're going to do it. And they're going to do it and they're going to tell you to piss off. And it's a very frustrating situation. So trying to educate gently and, hey, this is why I actually said that. This is why I did it this way. This is why I said if it's available on pet store shelves, I don't really think it's worth breeding anymore. Is a very different approach to the argumentative, cantankerous, oh my God, you shouldn't do that behaviors of most people. I
Yeah.
mean, we're seeing it like crazy in South Florida and places all around the United States with laws trying to curb what we could keep, and it's I mean, Greg and I are benefited. We're in the Northeast. We've had terrible reptile laws for the last 10 years. So it really doesn't even matter to us at this point. But um, in terms of like trying to get them reversed and revoked and all of that stuff, like they've been
Mhm.
here for so long that, you go to you go to a pet store here locally and it's just the very common animals that are very legally
Mhm.
obtainable anywhere. Um, versus, you go to some of the expos and you see retics and berms and all these bigger snakes. We don't have any ownership of large pythons
Right.
in New York State. Um, and it just becomes a really negative argument when you're trying to talk logistics to somebody coming from a state where I've been heavily regulated and I was licensed to own things that people in New York State aren't allowed to own for many years.
Mhm.
Trying to explain that, hey, maybe it's not a good idea to do that illegal thing and have that animal under the radar, or it's just as a whole in this hobby, all of these things are interrelated
I'm
because everybody just wants what they want and they want to do what they want to do, whether it's breed 20 corn snakes or bearded dragons or try. But introducing them through this podcast and educating them gently, calmly, quietly about all the other species that are out there is the most important thing as hobbyists that we can do with the experience that we have,
Mhm.
is explaining there's more than just that ball python out there.
Yeah.
You don't have to chase those things just because everybody else has one. There are 3,000 species that you could potentially draw from, and some of them are critically endangered, yet readily available in captivity here,
Yeah.
and it's something that you could work with and be a really positive influence in the community, like yourself.
Well, thanks. And I mean, just touching on that point too, like even from a logistical or business perspective, if there are people that are motivated by obtaining wealth, and what a lot of these animals, because of how abundant they are, that market is so saturated. So
Yep.
you have to remember that when you're breeding animals, it's not just you're not, I don't know, producing a product. Like you're creating lives that require funds and time to care for properly, feed, etc. And then you have to be able to find competent homes for each of those animals.
Yep.
So if you're producing crested geckos or whatever, ball pythons, that's a market that in some ways is already very saturated unless you're playing with like whatever triple gene, I don't know what morphs and
Right, right,
stuff.
right.
Um, it's very saturated as is. And then you're stuck in a position where you are having a hard time finding homes for these animals, and that's not a position you want to be in regardless. So it's not just quick change or money or anything like that. Like besides the morality dilemma and the idea of the great point you made about like how you can contribute to captive representation of more uncommon species, like
Mhm.
the other ones aren't just an easy like cash whatever cash in cash out. Like you might be in over your head
Yeah.
spending tons of money keeping these animals that you can't find homes for. So, that's it's a bit of a pessimistic way of looking at it, but I think it's one way you have to consider it too. Like it's very realistic too. Like this
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's a
the
very
outcome.
realistic view, a very realistic view of that particular side of the hobby. I
I'm
agree.
sure you see that with shelters too. I'm sure there's plenty of people like I just want out of the whatever ball python hobby, and some people probably abandon animals or do all sorts of things. So it's
That's a
unfortunate.
conversation for another time. But yeah,
Yeah,
we've seen it all. It's pretty, people can be people. Let's just go there.
unfortunate. Disheartening.
But, at the end of the day, Dion, what you're doing is really pivotal, um, to change the opinions of others. And you're doing it from a caring place, and it's incredible. The fact that you can reach so many people is fantastic. It really is. It's power in the hands of somebody who wields it correctly, I guess is the best way to say it
Oh, thank
in a sentence.
you. Very flattering.
Your
Thank you.
your work with those crocodile skinks and the Europlatus before that are just amazing. As Greg was talking about when we first started, your enclosures are always spot on. You think about the best way to do something that's both perfect for the animal and perfect for yourself to be able to maintain that space, and it goes a long way to uh influencing the way others keep their animals, and that's a really cool way to do it. That's a really it's a really good way to do it, excuse me. um you know i I don't think that we have I don't think we have a whole lot of time left, do we, Greg?
No.
No. Sorry. I'm
No,
gonna
it's all good.
ramble at that point. Pardon me, I got brain stopped because it is
No, no, you're good. I
7:15.
mean, I'm the one who's eating up our time with the
But
tangent,
no,
so
you're fine. We all talk on tangents. That's what happens here. But yeah,
that
I
is
mean,
love
your
that.
work is incredible, and we really do appreciate your take on the reptile hobby, both in the wild and in captivity. I hope you continue for many, many years to share your stories, be it captivity or wild treks that you do around the world. I think it's very pivotal and important for people to see that nature's amazing. You just have to look, number one, and you can bring these animals into your home, and you can keep them very, very close to nature. And that's the way I've been as a reptile keeper for most of my adult life, and the majority of my entire life. Um, Bringing a piece of nature inside was always the reason for doing it. The rescue is a whole other conversation, but
Mhm.
it's very cool to see natural behaviors from animals that may exist in Malaysia and you've never seen them before in the wild.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and how relatable they might be to, say, that Gray's tree frog that we were talking about earlier. It's crazy to think that they can do the same things, or the call that Gray's tree frog makes versus something like a tokay bark or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's very relatable information, and I love nature, and I love being able to go outside here in New York State and see the amazing animals that we have here. I love that people like you do what you do, so we can see the animals all across the world. I think it's phenomenal. Keep going,
Well, thank you. I really
please.
appreciate that a lot. I mean, I always say that, as a community, as an individual, there's no ceiling to what we can learn and continue to gain from each other's experiences, whether you're someone who's a beginner or someone who's been doing this for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Everything is evolving and changing, and we're refining how we do things. And someone who's just starting out might find a really unique and effective way of doing something that the person who's an old timer can benefit from. And that's why community is so important, and humility as well in the way we go about doing it, just being open minded to
Oh yeah.
learning new things. So I like to think, navigated and express myself with that attitude. And I always try to share what I'm doing with that sense of humility. Like, this is my experience and what I'm doing. It's not finite or it's not perfect or however you want to put it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how I carry myself. So, but I really appreciate what you've shared, and I'm touched that you see me in that regard. And I'll continue to work towards maintaining that standard and what I do.
Good. Good. I mean, I don't really think it's all that much work for you. I think you do it naturally. So I don't think it's a
More
very
compliments.
I don't think it's a very conscious effort. I think it's you just know what that animal needs and you just make sure you
Well,
abide
thank
by
you.
those rules, you know?
Oh, thank you. I mean, I make plenty of mistakes, and I usually show them too to show
Yeah.
that side of things. But yeah, I mean, it's I say this like on every podcast when this topic comes up. It's like the whole Peter Parker, or like the Spider-Man, with great power comes great
Yeah. Yeah.
responsibility, right?
Yeah.
So you have to remember that when you are sharing to the masses, whether it's yourselves or me or whoever, on you want to make sure what you're sharing is either very accurate, or it's humbly your experience and one way of doing things. And it's not like a get out of jail free card, but you have to be careful when you say this is the only way to do
Right.
something. There's usually, especially in our industry, many ways to do something right.
Yep.
And also, again, knowing in the back of your mind that this may not be right in 10 years from now. And if that video is still up, at least it's not incorrect, but it's like this was one way of doing it, right? So,
Right.
yeah, that is something that's more conscious. I think that you have to be careful how you share things. But no, it's very nice of you to say. Thank you.
I Greg, do you have anything else to say?
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
just
want to interrupt you.
all I really just wanted to, second Brian, and thanking you for coming on, and it's for me, and my brain is like at like 2 out of 10 of functionality right now. So I probably could not come up with like a good way to close this off. So I'll leave that up to you two to figure out how to end the episode.
Well, I'm just gonna say I really appreciate Dion giving us the time that he did tonight. I'm sure he's very busy. I'm sure he's got a lot of millions of things he's got to do. And if my videos that I produce take as long as I take to edit them, I'm sure editing is a big part of your week.
Yeah.
Judging on the production value of the videos that you send out.
Thank you.
I mean,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
it's really a remarkable thing that you do, and we really appreciate it. And continue to trek all over the world, because I can't wait to see it personally, and I'm sure hundreds of thousands of others will eventually as well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. I really appreciate you having me on. I appreciate the patience you had in waiting as long as you did to finally have me. And I know it's tough. It is a lot. Like, I'm a one-man operation. It was, like I said before, I had my friend who was helping before to give me more time to edit, whatnot. But yeah, I do it all myself. I'm caring for all the animals. I'm editing. I'm filming. So as you joked about editing, literally after this, I'm gonna cook something to eat and get back to making the 9th episode of the Madagascar trip. So it's a lot, and sometimes I laugh and remind myself, oh yeah, people have weekends. So
Yeah.
but I try to take the time I need. But yeah, no, I love it. I'm blessed. I'm thankful I can do what I love as well, and it's all part of the journey of figuring it out. And but I thank you so much for having me. This has been a pleasure, and I always love having these meaningful conversations that we can have with fellow like-minded hobbyists and members of the industry as well. So this has really been great. I thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for coming on again.
Yeah, absolutely.
My
Thanks.
pleasure.
We will definitely try and do this again sometime, perhaps on the next series or what have you. Who knows what we'll be talking about then.
Sure. Yeah, that would be great.
All right. Well, good luck with the Shinisaurus.
Yeah. I'd say keep us updated, but I'm gonna see it.
Yeah,
Really.
I'm sure I'll post something.
Yeah, right.
Make sure you personally tell me everything that's going on.
Right. Yeah. I'm important. Please tell me what happened. No. But no, we really appreciate it. Diane, have a great evening, and don't edit too much. Don't forget to take some mental health breaks here and there. All right.
I'll try. Thank you. You guys too, eh?
All right. Have a good night.
Get the 2% to 10%, right?
Right.
Yeah, thank you. You have a good night too. Thanks again.
All right, we'll talk.
Take care.